My heart is racing. I'm rushing to hop a red-eye flight to New York to then meet Jay-Z the next day with a watch is not even in our possession, and hope all of this works out. Okay, so to properly tell the story, we need to travel back in time around 10 years to the origin. So in around 2014, when I started taking watches seriously, that being the selling of watches seriously, I'd purchased a Universal Genève Aero Compacts off of eBay. Lo and behold, the seller was actually local to me in Miami, Florida, and he sent me a message saying, "Hey, I'm local to you. Why don't we meet up and I'll deliver the watch to you in person?" I said, "That sounds great to me." I was still practicing law as an attorney at that time. I hadn't transitioned into full-time watches until 2015. So we had decided to meet at a Starbucks right down the street from my law office in North Miami, Florida. And I go into the Starbucks and I meet this young gentleman, maybe around my age, who had the UG. We sit down, have a cup of coffee, and we get to talking. And we hit it off right away. We learn about each other's backstories. This gentleman had been a collector for some years, and he said he took a few years off from collecting and dealing with watches, and now he's kind of back on the scene and passing along this watch. And that all sounded great, and so I took the watch with me. We parted our ways, but we stayed in contact. And we communicated then semi-regularly, doing some more business together, etc. Lo and behold, I go in to find out that this gentleman, the reason he had taken some time off, which is obviously very relevant to the story, is that he was extradited from South America to the United States and did some time away for a couple years, as we could put it, for a very nonviolent white-collar crime. He had just been released and was getting back on the scene, and a lot of his colleagues and people he'd done business with before he had these legal troubles kind of weren't answering his calls anymore, maybe a little bit nervous. But he and I had hit it off, and I'm always one for giving people second chances, and he seemed like a very good person and had not obviously done anything wrong by me. So we started doing business and got to know each other better. 10 years later, I'm proud to call him one of my closest friends and almost like family. He's now obviously fully, functional member of society, has a couple of very successful businesses, a wife, kids, etc. So obviously he had paid for his sins by doing some time away and learned from it and moved on for the better. But it would take a couple years for him getting to know me and feeling more comfortable with me to let me know that in his collecting days, about 15 years prior from now in 2024, he had bought a lot of really big watches out of South America, a lot of important watches. Now, mind you, at the time when he was buying these watches, they weren't really worth what they're worth today, and they weren't as special as we consider them today. But he was able to tuck away some really nice watches as a collector over the years out of South America because people really didn't know what they had out there. And again, it was during a time where watches weren't worth what they were worth today. So we're talking really important watches. Like, for example, I think he had told me a story about selling one of the only white gold 1680 Submariners, a platinum 1518 Patek Philippe perpetual calendar was in his collection, some really incredible stuff. Several years ago in 2017, he had told me that he was in possession, or he had bought several years prior, obviously before all of his legal troubles and everything, the only known 6265 lemon dial gold Paul Newman, which I discussed before on the channel, which is the most expensive wristwatch I have ever sold, and that's where that watch came from. I knew of a few more that he had never sold and kept in his collection for decades, slowly now pulling them out as he wanted to, liquidate and free up some cash, and had taken the time to enjoy them over the years. And so I knew right around 2017 when we sold this watch that he told me that he had another very special Paul Newman that one day he would give me the opportunity to buy. And, he told me what it was, so I knew that this watch was in existence, but he said he wasn't ready to part with it yet. So it's okay, we did business on plenty of other watches, and like I said, he's one of my closest friends. So didn't really think much of it. Now, fast forward to 2023, I'm contacted by a gentleman out of New York, a very awesome watch dealer by the name of Alex Todd. Alex Todd is very well known in New York City for curating some amazing modern watches, a lot of really crazy Richard Milles, Audemars Piguets, Patek Philippe's, and he has a very specific clientele, which is many famous hip-hop and actor celebrities in New York City and surrounding areas. Alex had contacted me via a referral from Adrian Taskin of Luxury Bazaar because one of his major clients, Mr. Jay-Z, was interested in a gold Paul Newman out of the country, and he wanted some more information, made sure that what he was looking at was legitimate and correct, Adrian, obviously not knowing these watches very well, said, you have to talk to Adam, and passed along my phone number. So Alex and I hopped on a phone call. He showed me the watch. I actually knew the watch from before. Suffice it to say, I wasn't a huge fan of this watch. I wasn't a huge fan of the originality of it. Some certain elements of it didn't really line up to me, and obviously the condition of it as well was not what I thought was on par for somebody like Jay-Z to be collecting. So I told him so, and I said, listen, in my humble opinion, if you're giving advice to the gentleman, I would advise waiting for a better example or trying to find something a little bit better for him. And I guess he took that advice back to Jay, and Jay ended up passing on the watch. In the meantime, I was able to locate a couple similar examples, although not quite what he was looking at. Offered it to Jay-Z through Alex, but it wasn't quite hitting the mark, so we left it there. About a month later, I was finally contacted by my dear friend now of 10 years about the special watch that I'd known about now for 6 years, that he was finally ready to sell. And I said, listen, I think I might have somebody who would be the perfect buyer for this watch. Now, to set the stage, this watch is a Rolex Daytona with a Paul Newman dial, reference 6263, the very first iteration, Mark I, and circa 1969. I didn't even make the connection that 1969 was Jay-Z's birth year, but Alex certainly did. Now, Jay-Z had just been announced not too long before as an ambassador of Tiffany & Co., so I figured, hey, you never know. If you don't ask, the answer's always no, something my dad taught me. So I gave Alex a call and I said, hey, listen, I'm getting this really important Daytona in. I think it might be interesting for your client. Here's the information. Let me know what you think. Within about 30 minutes, Alex got back to me and said, okay, listen, what's the price? What's the details? He's interested. And from there on, the rate at which everything moved was lightning paced. Jay-Z is an astute collector, really knows what he likes, knows what he's doing, has a really great eye if you look at some of the other watches in his collection. And he's been doing this a long time. He's not a seasoned vintage buyer, but he's been working his way up, buying some incredible stuff. He's bought a ridiculous Patek Philippe perpetual calendar, reference 2499, bought some other crazy APs in the vintage world, some other really special stuff that I know about that I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about, but I'm sure you guys will see soon enough through various social media postings. But anyways, I sent Alex all the information on the watch. I sent him all of the pictures that I had. Now, mind you, this watch was still located in South America. It was not yet in my possession. My friend had told me, hey, I'm ready to sell it, but we hadn't gotten it back over to the United States yet. I figured that this process, selling the watch to Jay-Z, might take some time, so I just wanted to kind of get the ball rolling a little bit in advance and see what the interest level was like. But after sending the pictures and information to Alex, we had a deal pretty much in theory in place within an hour. And Alex is asking me, I think this was like on a Monday, he's asking me, well, when can you have the watch in New York? And I'm like, well, listen, the watch is not even in the country yet. It's in South America, sitting in a safe that this guy's had his whole collection sitting in for decades now. I got to have it brought over. We got to have it imported. We got to do go through all the proper channels to get it here. And the watch has been sitting for a long time. I want to inspect it. I want to make sure everything's running properly. I want to make sure the condition is as good as it looks in the photos. Not that I don't trust my friend, because I know for a fact he knows what he's looking at and he's been doing this long enough. And the pictures that I had that he'd sent me were pretty clear. It's still, there's no substitute for in-hand inspection and experience. So I said, listen, let me see what I could do, see if we could get somebody to bring the watch over quicker. And he explained to me that Jay-Z is only in his office in New York City a couple days during a week because he's always traveling and whatnot. And I said, I'll move on this as fast as possible. A few days goes by and I'm trying to get somebody to bring this watch over. We're working very hard to make this happen as soon as possible. That coming weekend, I had a trip planned for something that I've always personally wanted to do, which was attend Comic-Con in San Diego. I had it all set up. A very, very, very dear friend of mine has 2 booths at Comic-Con. And so he said, why don't you come on over? You can hang out at our booth. I'll show you around, because he does the show every year as an exhibitor. And I said, that's great. I'd made the plans months in advance, booked the hotels, booked the flights, etc. So I had left that weekend during the week we were discussing with Alex to go to Comic-Con. I think I arrived on Friday and I attended the show Saturday morning, meeting up with my friend and another friend. And as we're walking around, I couldn't have been there for more than 3 hours. Alex calls me and says, you need to be in New York tomorrow with the watch. Now, mind you, the watch was arriving in Miami, which I'm not presently located in. I'm in San Diego, California, that night, that Saturday evening at around 11 o'clock, okay? So I said, listen, this is going to be a little tight, but let me see what I could do. I call up Jordan, who's my right-hand man, the office manager here at Menta Watches, who you guys have seen on the channel, and I say, listen, here's the situation. You need to meet somebody at the airport after it clears customs and pick up this watch at 11 o'clock at night. And then on Sunday, you need to hop a flight to New York City and meet me there at around 6 p.m. in the afternoon. We need to get this all done within a very short time frame. And oh yeah, please, by the way, make sure the watch is working properly. Now I'm rushing out of Comic-Con on Saturday to hop a red-eye flight to New York to then meet Jay-Z the next day with a watch that has not even been delivered to Miami yet, is not even in our possession, and hope all of this works out. So later that night, I get a phone call from Jordan. He got the watch. Everything's great, or so we thought. He starts trying to test the chronograph function and test the watch overall, and it wasn't quite working properly. So now, after I land in New York on a red-eye flight Sunday morning, before Jordan's supposed to board a flight around 3 o'clock or so, or 2 o'clock, whatever it was in the afternoon, we're scrambling to find a watchmaker who could meet us on the weekend to take a look at this watch and figure out what is going on. We made so many phone calls and we called in so many favors. We finally got a watchmaker that we trust to take a look at the watch. That morning, the watch had a broken mainspring because it had been sitting so long. The watchmaker luckily had a mainspring that he could use to replace it, but he said, listen, this is an all-day job. This is something that ideally I would like several days to sit down, take apart this watch properly, and fix it properly. And I was like, listen, you got an hour. So the watchmaker said, I'll do the best I can. He got the watch running, but he clearly disclosed to us, which we then disclosed to Alex and Jay-Z, hey, listen, this needs to at some point go back for a proper service, but it's running now for at least to us to take it up to you and show it to you. No problem. Jordan is now racing to the airport, and he's racing because he's about to miss his flight because the watchmaker took a little bit longer than an hour, but we didn't want to rush him. We didn't want the watch to get damaged. He narrowly misses his flight, pushing people out of the way at security, trying to fight to get through the line, literally racing to get to the gate with the watch on his wrist. Of course, once he gets to the gate, he notices that now the chrono hand is not resetting to 12, probably because it bounced around so much. Fine, no problem, get on the flight. I am completely exhausted. I can't sleep on a red-eye flight, especially sitting up. I just can't. So I'm in New York City. My heart is racing, you know, so much adrenaline that I don't sleep in the morning when I land there Sunday morning. But we head over to Rock Nation office in New York City to meet Jay-Z. I think we got there, I don't know, around like 4:30 or whatever it was. Jordan met me there. We got there on time. And lo and behold, it didn't seem we needed to rush because Jay-Z was wrapped up in meetings the whole day, and we sat there for about 2 hours, migrating from his conference room to his balcony outside. A couple of the coolest hours I've ever spent just sitting in somebody's office, because we got to meet a lot of cool people that work with Jay-Z and hear a lot of really cool stories, and it was just a really interesting time. Finally, the time had come. Jay-Z was finished with his meetings. We get called into the director of his sports operations office with some NFL players in there hanging out. Jay-Z had already been pretty versed on the watch. He already knew what he was going to be looking at, giving him all the information. But Alex really wanted me there, A, to deliver the watch, and B, be on hand to explain any questions he might have. I explained a little bit about the watch. Again, he already knew all of the relevant facts and knew what we were there to discuss. Put it on his wrist, although I had to size it for him. And he was like, I absolutely love it. I'll take it. Thank you so much. The whole meeting was over within 10 minutes. The guy was incredibly nice, incredibly humble. And after that, he shook my hand and took off with the watch. And that was that. We have since done a couple other deals, and the guy is absolutely top notch. It's one of the craziest watch delivery stories that I personally have, scrambling to get all this done, but it was such an important watch for such an important guy that I was so happy to do it.